Welcome to episode 21 of the Cals Report. I'm Will Reese, Cals Director, and this month, Ryan Bradley is joined by Alan Greene, Director of Athletics at the University of Pittsburgh, for the big interview. Alan shares perspective from his journey as a Notre Dame student athlete and professional baseball player to his career in college athletics leadership. The conversation covers career growth, lessons learned in the chair, building alignment at Pitt, leading through change, revenue generation, and keeping student-athlete development at the center of the mission. It's an honest and insightful conversation with a leader who brings humility, perspective, and purpose to the work. Thanks for joining us for the Cals Report, where the conversation continues long after the event ends.
It's time now for the big interview here on the Cals Report podcast. I'm Ryan Bradley, and I'm very pleased to be joined this month by our big interview, the Director of Athletics at the University of Pittsburgh, Alan Greene. Alan, thanks for being with us. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Ryan. Thanks for having me on.
Excited to dive in with you. Want to learn a little bit more about your background and how you got into college athletics. Ultimately, talk a little bit about all the issues leaders like yourself are facing in today's college environment. But let's start with the fun stuff.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the beginning. You got your first taste of college athletics as a student athlete. You played baseball at the University of Notre Dame. Tell us about that experience and how it helped shape you personally and professionally, and ultimately made you think maybe I would like to be in college athletics as a career someday.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Athletics has been such a huge part of my life since I can remember. Baseball specifically, and each of those people who have played different sports use what they've learned in their particular sport and apply it to life. And baseball has been one for me that has, you talk about resiliency, you talk about being able to step up to the plate time and time again after failures, having to have confidence in yourself, to the borderline of having arrogance, as baseball players can often be described as sometimes, knowing how to be around people who are different than you, who think differently than you, who approach the game differently than you, fighting for a cause bigger than yourself, understanding and recognizing the sacrifice that you have to make personally in order for your team to have success, thinking about time management, thinking about dealing with big wins, dealing with tough losses. All of those things I apply every day to my job. I think what I've applied the most, though, is the teammate and the teamwork, and making sure that there's collaboration and caring more about the success of others than your own success. So when I say that, meaning if I was the leadoff hitter and I saw 7 pitches, I'd go back to the dugout. Of course, after striking out or grounding out or something, I'd go back to the dugout and I would tell my teammates what I saw, so that when they have a chance to hit, they're in a better position. We try to do that every day here in our athletics department. I try to lead that way, and it's been a hallmark of our success.
So tons of lessons learned. You went on from Notre Dame to play professional baseball for several years. What was it that ultimately inspired you when you decided it was time to hang up the spikes, that you wanted to go into college athletics as a career, and how did you get your start?
Yeah, that's another excellent question. So I think we have to go back to my high school years and maybe even further back than that. My family cares deeply about education, and my grandmother, who didn't make it out of high school, made me swear to her that I was going to graduate from college before she passed away. And that is true, I did. And so going into college, I went to the University of Notre Dame and played baseball there, and got drafted by the Yankees and played professional ball. But playing professional sports and being on this quest, this journey to be a big leaguer was not plan A. That was plan B. I majored in finance and actually planned on working on Wall Street in investment banking. And obviously that didn't turn out, but I'm so much happier where I am now. And making sure that, I had a plan to be able to step into a profession once my hobby, if you will, expired. And that was the first time I gotten fired. I was 3 years in the Yankees organization. As you're in that league and that level, everyone's good and everyone can play. And I just got to the point where there were people who the Yankees invested more in than me, and there were people who were better than me. And my clock ran out. But it was a tremendous experience. I've learned so many life lessons. I use them all to this day, and it's something I wouldn't trade for the world.
Early in your career, you had an opportunity to to work several different places in several different roles, work internal jobs like compliance, external focused jobs like development. What did those different experiences early in your athletic administration career teach you about how an athletic department functions and ultimately what kind of leader you wanted to be?
Working in compliance as my first foray into college athletics was not the script I was trying to write, but it was a really good one. And I'm glad I got a chance to work in that office first. And it taught me integrity above all else. There are times in our lives, both personally and professionally, where we're faced to do things that are really inconvenient for us, but maybe the right thing for an organization. And part of what compliance taught me is do what's right by your organization, even if it's inconvenient for you. I then went over to development, which is an odd jump, but I'm probably more of an external development person anyway, and probably was the outlier in compliance. And that helped me get more acquainted and better, more acquainted with people who support our programs, and started to introduce me to the mechanics of behind the scenes of how athletic departments work. What really did it for me was the move to Buffalo. Danny White, who now the AD at Tennessee, he was the head fundraiser at Ole Miss, and he's the one who brought me to Ole Miss. And when he got the AD job at Buffalo, I went as his number two. So you think about some young early in our career, first time AD, first time deputy COO, number two, whatever, and we were really trying to figure things out. But I cut my teeth, made a lot of mistakes at Buffalo that have helped make me the person I am today. I would encourage, to the degree that someone can, is take a chance at the mid majors, wear lots of hats, and be responsible for a wide variety of things. You'll grow immensely through that experience, and I did, and I'm so thankful for it.
It's great insight. Let's stay with Buffalo on the career path. It's
Yes.
also where you got your first opportunity to serve as an AD.
Yes.
When you took that job, what did you think you knew that you ultimately figured out maybe you didn't know? And what was that learning curve like for you, moving from, just a few feet over from that deputy number two role to the buck stops on my
Yeah.
face?
I'm sure, like many people watching this, you've been at NACDA, and you sit and listen to ADs talk, new ADs in particular, talk about, the office may be one office over, but the jobs are worlds apart. I didn't believe it until it actually happened. And it is so true, right? You sit at the head of the table and everyone looks at you for the decision, and you're responsible ultimately, right, for the livelihoods of all these, staff members and coaches and student athletes. And it's a hefty responsibility, and one that I do not take lightly. I mentioned mistakes. There's what I'm still learning, right? And I will be the first to admit that I don't know everything. And but you learn that life isn't perfect. You learn that it's not a straight line. You learn that there are nuances to these roles in leadership. And I learned that, especially in athletic departments or in programs, very rarely do you have, we'll take athletic departments specifically, very rarely do you have someone in your department who's also been an AD. If you really think about that, most departments only have one person who's ever been an AD. And so it makes it challenging for the rest of the staff to understand what the AD is actually going through, particularly as our roles have evolved over the past few years. So that was one observation that I had. I was like, oh, I could do that job easily. Better yet, I'm like, I can't do that job. But you learn a lot by the rooms that you're in, the people who you talk to, and you have a better sense of the surroundings. I also learned that you're not going to make everybody happy. And there's so many constituents who feel so passionately about your particular school or particular program or particular decision, and they're not going to be happy with every decision that you make. They're also not going to have the information that you have, or they may have different information that you don't have. And those are challenging positions to be in as leaders, but those are the responsibilities that we carry every day. And most of us do the best that we can to learn all that we can before we make decisions. And the reality is that sometimes we make good ones and sometimes we don't.
We're going to get to Pitt, your current assignment here in a minute, but I want to follow up on what you just talked about in terms of that perspective gain from moving from one side of the desk to the other.
Yeah.
You left Buffalo, went on to Auburn. You later worked at Tennessee, again, connecting with Danny White in that senior deputy role. I want to ask you for a minute to think back on that experience at Tennessee, where you moved back into that number 2 role, advisor, maybe day-to-day operations leader for the organization. How did moving into that seat again after having served in the chair help shape and inform your leadership and the way that you approach that work? A lot of the people who are listening to this podcast are in those roles, but they haven't had the luxury of having sat on the other side of the desk. So how did having that experience and then serving Danny and his team at Tennessee help shape and maybe change your perspective in the way that you approach leadership from that number 2 position?
Yeah, well, first, I want to credit Danny for bringing me on. Before Tennessee, I was actually at Ole Miss in somewhat of a similar capacity with Keith Carter, both of whom I had the fortunate opportunity to work with. And actually, all three of us worked together at Ole Miss at one point in time. And all three of us were ADs in the SEC at one point in time. And what I would say, I'm going to put words in their mouths, both of them, is that because of my earlier statement that having someone who's been in the fire, you don't have that often. It was helpful really for the rest of the staff, and I could translate what the leaders were going through to the rest of the staff to help them realize, what to take to them, how to take it to them. I also know them personally, and I know their styles, but then I could also intercept. Right. And I could step in and say, well, we should probably run it this way. And if I was unsure of how to do it, then I could go to Danny or advise other staff to go to Danny or to Keith to help them come to a conclusion. So I think it made sense. It was good for me to reset and to gain even more perspective, having been in the chair, then stepping out of it and being in a supporting role. They're very different responsibilities, and I appreciate our senior level administrators more having gone through that exercise, and I actually appreciate the role that ADs play even more of having gone through that as well.
So from Tennessee, you see the opportunity at Pitt open up. What was it that attracted you to that position and ultimately helped you identify that as the right next step for you?
It's probably best to talk about why it wasn't the right fit, because I think it provides some context to those who want to ascend to the chair, or if are already in the chair, want to perhaps go someplace else, right, to level up, so to speak. My wife and I had been around. We've moved a lot. Our kids have moved a lot. Quite frankly, we were tired of moving. So I wasn't necessarily interested in this opportunity when it became available, and I quite honestly didn't pay much attention to it. I didn't want to be on an urban campus. I didn't want to deal with traffic. There was lots about Pitt that I'm like, I don't want to deal with that. I'm fine at Tennessee where I am. Our kids are happy. My wife is happy. We're in a thriving athletics department, and one that's got tremendous alignment. There's no reason to leave. I got a call from a couple of acquaintances in the industry who knew my story, who knew our chancellor's story, who knew Pitt's story. And they just simply said, knowing you, knowing what Pitt needs, I think this would be a really good opportunity for you. And so I said, okay, let's have a conversation. My wife also was very supportive in the transition, to the point where she said, you know what, I think if you want it, then you should take it. Despite it meant moving the family, 3 times in 3 years and being apart again. What I will say to close this one out is alignment is critically important. Who you work with is critically important. Who you work for is critically important. And Chancellor Gable ran the search, and I identified with her right away. I'd actually met her at another event several years prior, and just remember thinking, that's the type of a leader that I would love to work for, not having any idea that it would actually come to fruition. But she's a tremendous leader. She's built a tremendous team. I'm very blessed to be a part of that, contribute where I can. and we have tremendous alignment here at Pitt, and that sold me on the job. My wife also kind of made me do it as well.
So you mentioned Chancellor Gable and her leadership. Uh, Beyond that, once you got inside and you started understanding what makes Pitt tick and
Yeah.
what the opportunities are there, how did that maybe change or enhance your vision for what Pitt athletics could be?
Yeah, it's interesting. As I've started to immerse myself in the community when I got here, people were very welcoming. Pittsburgh is this combination of a Midwest town with a little bit of Northeast grit to it and bite to it. It's obviously a Rust Belt city. It was built on innovation, 100 plus years ago with steel. We're still an innovative city, an innovative community, and one that deeply values sport, not just professional sports, but college as well. Our fans. So my wife is from right outside of Philadelphia, and I've watched Philadelphia fans be really love hard. Right, they're very passionate, but they're easy to critique. Our fans are very similar, but it's a wonderful place to be, where we have the opportunity to really have an imprint and an impact in our community, on our community, and with our student athletes, and that's an opportunity that I just couldn't pass up. People also tell me that I don't envy you. The job is tough. They're all tough. No matter where you are, leadership is very difficult at this day and age, and it's a responsibility that weighs heavily on our shoulders. But it's not impossible, and I don't shy away from it. I can't shy away from it. Good leaders don't. We embrace it. We take it on. We take on the challenge, and hopefully it makes us better, leaders, and produces a better product on the backside.
You're finishing up your second academic year at Pitt. When you first came in, what were some of the early priorities or initiatives that you identified? Hey, we're going to have to really focus our efforts and our energies here if we're going to advance the ball.
Yeah. So having been at different departments and done it different ways and seen it done different ways, what became apparent here is that it was important to build this inside out, meaning college athletics has shifted a lot over the past few years. And I felt that with my leadership and what was going to be required of me, which is to be out and about in this community, that we needed to have a structure that was ready to meet the demands of the current present day challenges of college athletics, to help build ourselves out for the future of college athletics. And we did some operational tweaks, some alignment tweaks, some organizational tweaks to get people in the room that better supported my style of leadership. So we built out an entire, I would say, senior executive team, cabinet, if you will, with 3 new leaders in Brant Ust, Kyle Bruce, and Leon Jackson III. And so that has allowed me to start to pull out a little bit of the day-to-day operations and decision-making of the department so that I can be in the community. I'm not where I want to be yet or where I thought I would be at this time in tenure, but we're making progress, and I'm seeing light at the end of the tunnel.
You've been direct about the importance of football and men's basketball in terms of your flagship sports and make sure those programs are in position to have success. How do you do that while also maintaining broad-based and successful athletic programs? I know this is kind of the billion-dollar existential question right now, but what's your approach look like at Pitt?
Yeah, I've had this conversation with lots of my peers, and we're all discussing it. I've been trying to figure out how we provide our student athletes a dynamic experience across the board, from their outcomes of competition to the growth of them personally. And it's become increasingly challenging to do that as football and men's basketball require such significant resources. I think what's different now is in the past, we tapped our alums, our donors, to help offset scholarship costs, to help offset certain expenses. I think we have to do the same and double down on that. And it's not that. I think athletics is reaching a position where it's going to be much more of a community investment, a community effort, as opposed to just saying, hey, athletics, put in more money, or hey, university, give us more money to be able to fund this operation. It's going to become everybody, get off the seat, let's dig in your wallets, and let's support these young people. There's a tremendous amount of value in sport, in all sports, not just football or men's basketball. As I mentioned, I'm a former baseball player. We did not generate any revenue at our school, but it doesn't mean that it's not a valuable proposition. And the more that we can uplift our student athletes, the more that we can put them in positions to help develop them and help them grow and to help them win, is only good for an institution, it's good for a community, and it's good for society.
You've been candid in some of your public comments about how things are shifting to a more transactional relationship with the student athletes, particularly in the recruitment process. How have you seen that environment evolving over the past couple of years? And what are you doing to try to bring balance to that approach and ensure that the academic mission still remains an essential component of the student athlete experience?
Yeah, well, I think there's lots of focus on football and men's basketball transfer portals. And when you see the rates at which student athletes are transferring, it certainly skews toward transactional relationships. I will tell you, successful programs, successful teams have transformational relationships. Yes, there's money involved, and some of that is highlighted more than we'd probably like for it to be highlighted. And I think that takes away from the real relationships that coaches are building with athletes, that administrations are building with athletes, and the lessons that our athletes are learning and the growth opportunities that they're having. The public talks about those two sports in particular. For those of us who are practitioners, we deal with all 500 of our athletes, and we know that the baseball player, the soccer player is just as important as the football player or the basketball player. But it is challenging. But I still will double down on what our core mission is. That is to develop young people, and it's important under the auspice, not the auspice, but it's important under the relationship with higher education that we continue to do so. Look, we're not going to be able to steal headlines away from how much a starting quarterback is getting, or how many times a kid has entered the transfer portal, or all the schools they've been to. Like, it's too much of a click, right? And the public has too much of an appetite to see those things. But the practitioners know that we impact more than just those athletes. But we certainly need those sports to do well in order for us to continue to serve all of our student athletes.
When it comes to resources, Pitt just posted a record fundraising year. What has allowed or enabled some of that success in terms of generating new revenues? And are there other maybe untapped or underappreciated resources and opportunities at Pitt that can help you continue to elevate resource opportunities and allocations for your programs?
Yeah, I think we begin to put together a compelling narrative for a case for support. People don't just have to give to NIL. It is the most critically important thing for us. Paying these players and paying football players and basketball players and having a competitive roster that helps us do everything else. But not everybody wants to support that. So we, like many schools, right, have avenues where people can give to scholarship. They can give to sports that may not typically get the support that football and men's basketball do. And for us, volleyball is a national competitive program. There are various pathways. We're on the beginning stage of this journey. We just had the Pittsburgh Marathon here recently, and we're at stage one, right? We're on mile one, and there's a long journey to go of windy roads, uphill climbs, downhill, in our wind and wind at our back. But we're going to continue to educate our base, help them understand the engine that drives everything else, but also know that there are pathways for contribution to support these young people and what they represent at Pitt.
You've acknowledged that Pitt may not ever have the most resources, but it can have grit. You alluded to grit when you talked about all the lessons you learned as a baseball player and failing. Where does grit show up as a competitive advantage in the current landscape of college athletics, where resources seem to, at least in the public narrative, seem to be predetermine the outcomes, so to speak, for who's going to have a real opportunity to compete and win?
I think whether it's old school college athletics, which was, kind of ended 6 years ago, or new school college athletics, you need to have enough resources to be in the neighborhood. But you don't have to have the biggest house to have the most success. You don't have to drive the nicest car. In many ways, those are material things. Who you are and the people that you have make the difference. And whenever we see a championship team, at whatever sport it is, there's some conversation about how much the roster costs, professional or collegiate. But what's often talked about, right? Preseason, it's all about how much money was spent. Postseason, and when you're holding up the trophy, it's about connectivity, it's about unity, it's about how much the team loves each other, what a great culture they have. It's not about we have the most expensive, person in this position on the team. So I think those are cues for us to take, where we understand that money's going to be very important to what we do in resources, but it's not everything. And that's where grit shows up, because every team that wins a championship has gone through adversity. It's unavoidable in sport. The people who can manage through that adversity best are the ones who are going to have the greatest success. So identifying the players who have not just the skill set to be able to run, jump, throw, pass, kick, whatever, they have to be able to confront adversity when it smacks them in the face. And they have to rise up to that challenge and compete harder and focus harder than they ever have before. That's the difference of what it is that and how we're trying to accomplish it, by then just saying we're going to buy a whole bunch of kids who are just tremendous athletes.
No shortage of complex issues facing college athletics today. I'm not going to ask you to try to give us the Alan Greene magic bullet solution to any of them here and now, but I will ask you, when you think about all of those different issues that are pressing down on the structure of what college athletics is, where do you prioritize kind of the hierarchy of needs in terms of what we need to move things forward and have some semblance of balance and structure that people can rely on to just operate day to day, and know that, we're you hear a lot about a level playing field. I don't know that there's ever been or ever will be a level playing field, but what do you feel like are some of the foundational structures that we really need to get solidified in order to move forward?
Yeah, the $1 million question with such a nuanced answer. Let me try to cut to the chase on this one. I think when people say level playing field, what they really mean is the same set of rules, right? Because you're right, the playing field has never been level. Minnesota and Miami are in different parts of the country. Some people like warm weather, some people don't mind cold weather. It's not going to be equal. As I see it, I think we spend lots of times on the symptoms that we're dealing with and facing. And I think we're spending less times on the root cause of what's driving these symptoms that we're facing. And from my perspective, we have an issue about our system, and we don't have a defensible system right now. And everything that we do to try to create rules that we can all follow, it gets challenged in court. And we're incredibly competitive individuals who are going to try to find a way to outlast our in-state rival or outlast other folks in our league. And that's problematic. So I think it's a challenge, and I don't have a good answer as to how we do it. I just know what needs to be done is we need to have a defensible model that can perhaps withstand the court more than our existing model.
As you're navigating that, both as the leader of your athletic department and a voice in the national conversation, but also trying to provide guidance and direction to your own coaches and your own student athletes, what's the North Star? What's your kind of positioning statement in terms of how we remain optimistic and control what we can control?
Yeah. So the way I think about it is young people. So I have children who are in college. I have 2 of them in college and one still at home. And as I will share with my kids, they need mom and dad more than ever. They need leadership more than ever. They need guidance more than ever. It's important that we are here, and our system and structure is here to help support them. They're actually in higher ed, there probably isn't an environment and an enterprise where student athletes have so many people who are championing their success. And once they leave college, it's adulting, right? Yeah, that sphere of support reduces dramatically. So this is an opportune time for them to develop the skills to make the mistakes that they need to make in college in a safer space than one that is or perhaps more unrelenting. So that's really important. That in many ways is our North Star, and being able to do that while competing for championships is really important for us at Pitt, and it's important for a lot of schools. It's becoming more and more challenging to do, but we are innovative and creative people. We tend to find ways to get what we want and accomplish what we want. That's what being an athlete, part of being an athlete is, and that's what we'll continue to do.
You mentioned everybody's facing these same issues, grappling with them. You've been involved with CALS a lot over the years. We've appreciated the time that you've given to be at our events and participate in conversations like this one. Why do you think it's so important for folks, aspiring athletic administrators in particular, but even sitting ADs like yourself, to remain connected and building relationships and sharing what's working and not working on your campuses in environments like CALS?
Yeah, Ryan, it's a great point. CALS has been awesome. It's a growth mindset, right? And we don't know all answers to all problems. And there's certainly some complicated ones that we're facing, but leaders need leadership as well, right? Managers need managing as well. And to be around a group of peers who are like-minded, who want to improve their own education and improve themselves, along with leaders who want to give back. It's a wonderful combination of being surrounded by people who are optimistic, realistic at the same time, but who are there to pour into other people. And that's a wonderful thing. And you leave typically energized. You've got some new ideas on things that you can apply to your own campus. And we're at a time in our society where people need each other. And it's nice to know that you're not the only one who's going through difficult times. But as we know through history, difficult times make tough people, and tough people make good times. So we're on this continuum, and we'll continue. The sun still rises every day and sunsets every night, and we still have things to look forward to each and every day. We're blessed to be on this earth.
For our CALS audience, whether they're on the cusp of maybe getting their first AD job, or maybe just listening to this, wanting to figure out how they might be able to get into college athletics and have a career someday, thinking back on your own journey through all those different stops early in your career, maturation through your 20s and 30s, what would your advice be in terms of that approach, lessons learned, good or bad, that help an individual navigate this and position themselves for an opportunity someday?
Yeah, early on in my career, I thought I knew everything, and I thought that I could do the job of our senior leaders. Why was I ignorant? I think as you move along and move up the ladder, you learn it gets more and more complicated the higher up you get, which was lost on me when I was starting. I had a boss who told me that I needed to take more not responsibility, but have more ownership in my job. And I was like, well, yeah, of course I have ownership in what I'm doing. I didn't realize that until I became a senior leader. And I think back to those many years ago. Wow. Now I know what she meant. You don't know what you don't know when you're starting off in this career. So my advice to myself is to and to others, particularly those starting off, have some patience. Recognize that you don't know everything. Even leaders don't know everything, but that's a part of the growth process. I think for young folks is work your tail off. Like do say yes to everything. Anytime someone asks you, do you want to help out? Yes. Don't even wait for them to say what it is. Don't worry about how much time it's going to take. Don't worry about spoiling your weekend. Don't worry about what time you have to get up in the morning, or just do. The more you do, the more experiences that you get, and the more experiences you get, the more perspective you have. And the more perspective you have, the better decisions that you're able to make. That is the cycle that that at least I'm still on that cycle in a different way, but I'm still working my tail off to learn from others who do it better, who do it differently than I do, because there's always opportunities for growth.
A couple more questions and we're going to get you out of
Sure.
here.
Yeah.
Finishing up your second year at Pitt, as we mentioned, when you think about the next 3 to 5 years, what does success look like for Pitt? What are some of your key goals and objectives moving forward, and how will you know when you're on the right track?
I had mentioned earlier about a marathon, and in order to run a marathon, you have to take it 1 mile at a time or one goal at a time. You can't take all, what is it, 26 point. I don't even know how long a marathon is, but you can't take on all that mileage at once. And that question about 5 years from now, considering the dynamics in our industry, it's very difficult to determine what is an appropriate 5-year plan. I'm really curious over the next three months what's going to happen, and the next 5 months of what's going to happen. We're in the process of finalizing our strategic plan. It's going to be a 3-year plan that we know is going to have to change because we continue to change the rules of engagement that we're operating under. It's important to be nimble. It's important to set a vision, but understanding that the navigation to get there is going to take you in paths that you perhaps didn't expect, and be okay with that. So we want to be nationally competitive. It's going to be really important to drive revenue out of football and men's basketball. We want to make sure that all of our student athletes have this transformational experience here. We want them all to be in position where they can compete for championships. We want to make sure that they're able to grow and develop as human beings. The best test of that is we want to get invited to weddings. We want to know about their career updates. We want to be able to reach out to them someday to see if our kids can work for them in whatever industry they're in. We want to be able to connect them with other folks who are working in their industry, doing it at a high level. All those things that I would say are incredibly rewarding. Some of them occur, instantaneously, and some of it's delayed. And just recognizing that that's the nuance in which we live, and be comfortable living in this, what some people would consider an uncomfortable space, but certainly an uncertain space.
That's a great transition into my last question. We know that fairly or unfairly, athletic directors are often judged on wins and losses, and particularly the success of those high-profile revenue-generating sports. But beyond that, how do you hope that you are remembered and your impact will be viewed as a leader in terms of what matters most and what you've devoted your career to?
Yeah, that's a really good question. One I'm not even prepared to answer. You listen to people who receive lifetime achievement awards, and there are people who are having a tremendous amount of success, and they ask what their legacy is. Personally, I think I'm living it, and I wanting to be a good person and good to others, and being thoughtful and wanting to help people succeed in whatever goals they have in their life. And that right is different for everybody, and working to meet people where they are. Aside from all the other stuff, everybody has their own lens, right? There are multiple truths, if you will, and the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So while some may be critical of a certain decision, others may applaud it. And it's just the nature of leadership. At the end of the day, it is what it is. At the end of the day, I've got my family. At the end of the day, I've got my kids, and I've got really close and great friendships that I've met in this industry. I've had experiences that I wouldn't exchange for the world. And there are people who are going to judge in ways that I may agree with, and in ways I disagree with. But that goes back to these jobs are difficult because there are always people who have opinions. Some of them are more informed than others, but it is what it is, and that's the responsibility that we bear.
That's great perspective, Alan. I can't thank you enough for making time once again to invest in the Cals community. Thanks for all that you've done to add value to our group over time. We look forward to seeing you again soon, and wish you the best of luck as you finish out the spring semester at Pitt.
Ryan, thanks for the opportunity. Always appreciative, Kyle's, and what Will has done to help grow that and grow our industry. And thanks for your time and effort and the great question. So with that, I'll just sign off by saying hail to Pitt.
All right. Thank you, Alan.
Thanks for listening to episode 21 of the Cals Report. A special thanks to Alan Greene for sharing his time and perspective, and to Ryan Bradley for leading another thoughtful big interview. This conversation is a great reminder that leadership is built through experience, relationships, humility, and a willingness to keep learning. You can find the Cals Report on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to follow us on social media at 80 Symposium on X, at the Cals Report on Instagram and on LinkedIn. You can also visit us anytime at 80symposium.us for event details and more content from across the Cals community. Until next time, stay connected, stay encouraged, and keep leading the way in college athletics.